I've gotten this broken into two parts. The first part is going to be more about SOPs and how we operate as a department. The second part is the fun part of actually the tactics of how to fight fire. But here's the thing. We need to first work on developing a professional mindset. Because by the end of the day today, you will have professional level skills. You say, well, how is that possible after one class? I've been to dozens of classes, whether it's 130, 190, or all the other classes the county puts on. And in none of those classes were you an expert by the end of the day. I assure you, by the end of the day today, you will have professional level skills, guaranteed, above what the county demonstrates on their wildland fire response. And I'll explain that when we get into that part of the class. Developing a professional mindset is one of the most difficult things you can do. Because what I'm asking you to do is stop being you. Plain and simple. I want you to stop being you, and I want you to become your red number. So, and here's the reasoning behind this. If there's a call, we have a house on fire, a wildland fire, vehicle rollover, doesn't matter. Whoever is the victim of that event, they don't want you showing up. They don't need a Joe Dijak or a Chris Truby or any one of us to just show up. That'd be like having your neighbor come over from next door. It's not very helpful. What is helpful is when a professional arrives, when somebody can show up to give them the extra added bit of comfort that you know what you're doing to be able to help them. So we have to change our persona when the radio goes off. Stop being who you are and start being your red number. And that red number is going to be being a professional. Okay. Let's see here. In order for you to operate at a professional level, you need a team, not an individual. One guy doesn't help. If there's a vehicle accident and you roll up to that, how much help can you really offer? Not a lot. I mean, one guy is very limited. Especially one guy without any equipment. One guy without any equipment, without any training is even worse. So it's, when you show up, you want to be a team. Whether it's just 2 guys, 5 guys, 10 guys, doesn't matter. So we're going to start to develop that as to how we operate as a team. That gives us the professional edge when we show up. It's not a landowner out there with a garden hose spraying around randomly. It's professional, showing up on scene and knowing exactly what to do, having a plan before we even arrive. And part of that is a level of overwatch. To have something over you watching out for you so that you can do your job. You know, a firefighter, it's a dangerous job anyway. I cannot assure anyone's safety fighting fire. It's just dangerous. It is what it is. But you should have some assurances walking into a scene that you're covered, that someone is actively looking out for you. And that's what I drew up here with our umbrellas. Umbrellas down here are the guys fighting the fire. They've got a hose in hand or a hand tool or something, and they're working the scene. This could also be, it applies to accidents or anything we would respond to. Whoever's got their hands in the scene, those are these guys down here. And their umbrella is small because they're very focused on what they're doing. They have to work on an injured party, they're digging line, they've got a hose over their shoulder and they're going somewhere with it. They are busy. Their mind is full. They cannot do any more, and you can't really ask of them any more than what they're already doing. Because think about the environment. Smoky, hot, fire, chaos, people screaming and yelling. You've got things that are out of the norm for you, things that you don't do every day. So your adrenaline is up. All these things are happening. So how much can you really pay attention to? And the answer is not very much. So your umbrella is small, and it only goes over the top of you, and it's over what you're doing. You're making sure, okay, is my fire line that I'm digging all the way down to bare mineral soil? Is the hose I'm dragging, am I keeping it out of the embers? Those kinds of little things. They're very important, because if you're not paying attention to that stuff, you're going to fail as fighting the fire, right? So you're focused on that. You need another level above you, and that's these other umbrellas. In our case, that's going to be our operators. I had a long conversation with Chris the other day about this, about how our operators are there to provide another level of overwatch over the people that are doing the work. So we will have another individual that's looking out not only for their own well-being, and operators have a lot to do. They're paying attention to a piece of equipment, you know, PSI ratings on a gauge, and a whole bunch of other things going on in the fire. Communications, they're monitoring everything that's going around them, and they're also taking care of you. You know, their job is to look out for whoever has been assigned to their truck. You know, that's their job, is to make sure that their people are safe. And then finally, over that, you would have the IC. Whoever is the IC of the incident, doesn't make any difference who it is, whether it's me, anybody, whoever has that role, that's your number one job, is being the big umbrella. You're not concerned with down here. You can't. You physically can't do it. If you start paying attention to each individual firefighter, you will fail, because you will get
comeback.
Yes, yeah. You went from here all the way down to here, and now your efforts are wasted. And while you're doing that, no one else has any cover over the top of them. No one else is looking out for them. Okay. So we want to make sure that we're building this kind of structure. And this structure, as it turns out, when you're looking at this, it's like, okay, I'm just a little guy down on the fire, I've got somebody responsible for me, and then somebody's responsible for them. What is this? Anybody tell me?
Command structure.
Command structure, thank you. This is the chain of command. It's not, hey, I get to tell everybody what to do. That's not how it works. Your job is to take care of the people that are assigned to you. And that's really what command is about. If you're not taking care of them, you can't give them instructions, because they're not going to listen to you. If they don't feel that you're taking care of them, they won't pay any attention. So that leads into expectations. And I'm going to start with me. You folks need to expect some things from me. And as I've said, with every training, the expectations keep going up, up, up. That applies to me as well. Your expectations of what I should be doing for you should go up, up, up. The first thing is safety in a hazardous environment. We already know that anything that we respond to has potential safety issues involved. That's a given. You can't do emergency service without acknowledging that fact. But with that in mind, my first job is keeping you all safe. Before the community comes to firefighters, and I've included that in the letter that's going to be on the website. I want the residents out here to know, you know, it's easy to say, well, I'm here for the community first. I'll do anything to save the community. That's not true. It's not realistic. The very first thing you have to do is take care of your people, because they're the ones who are taking care of the community. It's not me out there protecting the community, it's you guys. My job is to make sure that you're safe and are able to do that for the rest of the community. Accountable, and I'm accountable to you. I'm also accountable to the community. But the number one thing that I look at is being accountable to the volunteers that participate with Red Creek Fire. That's who I am accountable to. And lastly, and this is kind of the material end of it, is on a fire, on any scene, my job is to get you what you need. You know, you may need another tender. You may need another ambulance. Who knows? Whatever that need is, it's my job to try and facilitate getting that to you. And it could be static, like right here in the engine bay. One of those needs was just addressed. You know, Bill showed up this morning with a whole pile of new batteries for us, because we're suffering from a lack of good quality batteries. So those kinds of needs are being addressed, and that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Okay, the expectations, they're going to change big time by the end of this class. Up until now, I haven't had very many expectations for our fire department, because we really don't have that many skills. And the training that we've received has been the bare bones basics, which I hate to say can be somewhat confusing unless you're going out and doing it every single day. You know, it just goes kind of in one ear, falls out the other when you're not using it. So we're going to try and remedy that. But first, for the professional attitude is scope of duty. Scope of duty is the number one thing that gets you into trouble. It does it for any fire department. And I'll give you a quick little story to illustrate my point. On my engine down in the Forest Service in New Mexico, I had to go to a training class down at the SO. And it's like, okay, so I'm going down there to participate with this class. I had some stuff to teach, and so it's going to take my whole day. Well, my engine has some stuff to do. I got to keep them busy. You know, they're on the clock, and there's no fires going on, so I got to find something for them to do. So they got assigned to helping the park and rec folks clean the permanent set in the ground toilets at the campgrounds. Okay, all they got to do, their mission for the day, is to show up and pump water for the park and rec guys into the crappers so that they can pump them out and clean them. That's their entire assignment for the day. How can that go wrong? I mean, that's about as easy as it gets, right? I wish it was that good. On the way down the hill, the mountain range where we protected, once I got down to the bottom, our repeater system would cut out, so I'd get real spotty comms. I'm only 45 minutes away from my station. My engine left a little bit before me, so they're already at this campsite and have started doing what they're doing. And I start hearing on the radio. I hear one of my guys calling for, first for our dispatch, and they had some questions. I couldn't really make out what they were saying very well. And then I heard him asking for an LEO. And I'm going, oh, what are they into? And next there's a whole bunch of heated exchanges on the radio that I'm only catching little bits and pieces of. I'm going, oh crap. And then my phone starts ringing. And it's the district ranger, and it's the forest supervisor, and all the hornets got stirred. What my guy, who I had assigned to run the engine in my absence, had done is he showed up to this campsite. There was a big camp going on. There's about 30 people there celebrating a family reunion. They'd gone and gotten the permits and done all the things that they were supposed to do, and they were having a campfire. Well, my employee had listened to the news report that morning and saw that the state of New Mexico had closed down all open burning on state lands. That does not apply to federal lands. So he walked up to this individual camping and having a campfire and told them that they couldn't have a campfire, which stirred the hornet's nest from the individual having the campfire because they had filed the proper permits and gotten permission and done all the right things. Next thing you know, he's got 3 or 4 people in his face yelling and screaming at him saying, hey, I've got a permit, I'm allowed to have a fire, I can do this. And he's fearing for his own safety, so he's calling for law enforcement to come and back him up. Okay, he exceeded his scope of duty. And by the way, the ass chewing on that went from way on high all the way down to the bottom for about a week afterwards. Bad, bad deal. What that guy had done was assumed authority and a role that he didn't have. He confronted a civilian having a campfire with no authority. I mean, he actually has authority because he is a member of the Forest Service, and I mean, he's got the uniform on, he's got the truck, he looks the part, but unfortunately, he didn't have his facts right, number one, and he exceeded what he was supposed to do. His job was very simple for the day. Go clean out the crapper. That was it. That was his job. But instead, he took it upon himself to go beyond that. All with good intentions. I mean, there's obviously nothing wrong with what he was trying to do. He was trying to protect the forest, trying to do the right thing. But instead, what happened was a huge nightmare of political garbage because he had exceeded what his role was by so far. And this is one of the things that hamstrings volunteer departments. No one in this room is the kind of person that walks away from somebody needing help. We're not. We're volunteers. This is a group of good guys here. Unfortunately with that comes the idea that you can be a help at all times. And that's not the truth, because we are just individuals and we may not have a higher level of training. So what you want to do is be professional enough to allow someone else their forte, what they are good at. So when you're taking it upon yourself to be a professional, recognize other professionals and step aside when they arrive on scene. So I'll give you some examples. We get a call and it's a medical call. Who has authority on that scene? Anyone?
The ambulance.
Okay, the ambulance isn't there yet. Who has it then?
The IC is always in charge.
The IC. Okay. Now why is it different? I mean, when the ambulance rolls up, why do things change?
Level of professionalism.
And it's their job.
Their job, why is it their job?
They're medically trained.
Medically trained, okay, they have received the specialized training to deal with it. So even the IC will suddenly step back and say, ooh, here you go, this is yours.
Well,
Because you have higher level
the
training.
is you turn it over to the next higher authority,
Of course,
which is due to training.
exactly. And that makes us more proficient by being able to do that. We also need to recognize those levels in our own department and what we're doing. When we're going on a scene, if I'm there, most likely I'll take that leadership role at least to start. Or take it over when I get there. You know, we've had a couple of fires that I wasn't the first one on yet, so someone else will take the lead on it. When I show up, I'll kind of assume command of it and take over. I may not be there, maybe one of you guys. So you guys get to be that person. It's just the lead. They may not be on scene yet, so they're not actually the IC, but en route, you're the lead. Somebody has to take that lead role. Whoever the lead is, they may become the IC more than likely. But at some point, they may say, okay, I'm going to allow someone else with a higher level of training to take over. And that's what they should do. Unless you're doing like a training opportunity for somebody else, giving them a chance to, oh, here, you know, this may be above your skill levels, but hey, go play with it, see what you can do. You know, as long as, you know, no one's property or life is at risk, that's an okay thing. So, you know, and you end up with a lot of things out of that. You end up with the analogy of, you know, too many chiefs, not enough Indians, and it works in reverse. Too many Indians, not enough chiefs. You get that too. The Forest Service is horrible about having way too many chiefs and not near enough Indians. They have stacked, as most government agencies do, their upper echelons of people are loaded with folks, and the lower levels, there's hardly anybody to boss around. So you've got, you know, 10 supervisors show up, and there's 3 guys doing the work, and the supervisor's like, oh boy, somebody better go get coffee, or we got too many guys here, you know? And understanding the scope of what your job is very important. It comes down to gears in the machine, or in this case, gears in our team. Not the machine, but the team. I don't care what size the gear is. If any of them stop doing their job, the machine and the team begins to fail. Talk about some success, little things. We had a call a week or so ago, running around looking for a car that was, you know, not in our area. We're looking for this thing. I ran into Jerry down at the far end of the road down here. What did I do with you, Jerry?
Had me collect information.
Okay, where were you?
I was at the junction of 96 and Silent.
Okay. Did you have to move anywhere? What were my instructions when I got to you?
Asked the people around there if they'd seen anything that could be reported. We were looking for an individual that was reporting the turned over car, and I checked with the people there, and they hadn't seen anything for an hour.
Okay. Basically, I asked you to stay put, though.
Yes.
And just hang out right there.
Mm-hmm.
In the grand scheme of what we had going on, we had 7 responders out running all over hell and back. What size gear were you, Jerry?
Itty bitty.
Itty bitty, but crucial. It becomes that little gear, the little tiny gears actually end up being way more important than the big gears in the real world. But you need some of the big gears just to make things work smooth. The little gears are the ones, in your case, you're acting as intelligence gathering. You're finding out what's going on. Where are the people that are supposed to be sitting here waiting to talk to us? Where did they go? Did they ever show up? You found that information out. So that's a good thing. You know, that's a little gear doing good things. Now I'm gonna flip it over on you. Several months ago, we had another call. Late at night, everybody's zombies, you know, middle of darn night. And we were en route to a medical call, and you put in a request to dispatch for an ETA of an ambulance, correct?
Correct.
Why did you do that?
So that I would be able to help them get to the scene.
Okay.
And knowing whether they were dispatched and when they expected to get there meant that we would know when we could turn it over to them or what we had to do until they got there.
Okay. Is that your role? Was that your role? actually is probably the best answer I've ever heard to that, because that's what a lot of volunteer departments will say. I don't know, I'm not really sure what I was supposed to do. You know, that is huge, and thank you for saying that, because that's a good, honest answer, and that's where a lot of us get, is all of a sudden we're going, I'm not really sure what to do. So, we're going to come up with a few guidelines. Here are some do's and don'ts, and some of this is a little bit interactive. So, when you think of a professional emergency services responder, what comes to mind? Give me a description. Give me a word that describes that.
Professionalism.
Professionalism, okay.
Knowledgeable.
Knowledgeable, okay. They know their specific set of skills. Okay, what else? I got a pretty good list here. Calm, okay, yeah. Calm, cool, and collected. They're not excited. What else? Nothing? All right, think about it for a second. When somebody shows up and they are a professional, they are calm, cool, and collected, they are educated in their particular avenue of what they do, they are very polite. You know, they're not screaming and yelling at anybody. They're following SOPs. They're following a set of guidelines that keeps them acting professionally. You know, that's what a professional is. Now for us, we can attain that, even without all the professional skills, if we're thinking in that mindset of how both this operates and this. You know, don't underestimate the importance of the little cogs in the team. They are critical. Nothing works without them. And enjoy it, because you don't have a whole lot of responsibilities down there. It's kind of nice, actually. But it's very, very effective work gets done by those little wheels. The big wheels, not so much. And this. In order for this to work, you have to operate within the chain of command. And there's some things, these are the don'ts. The don't list is, you know, pretty easy to figure out. Self-dispatching. This is something government agencies deal with. I used to skirt the line as tight as I could to self-dispatching. Because number one, I wanted to get to the fire. And two, I had to do it within the rules. So how do you do that? For us, self-dispatching can be a little different. So if you see something, an emergency or whatever, and you just go to it, that's not quite right. You know, that's not the procedures, and that's not professionally how you handle it. Because once again, you're showing up as just your name. You're not showing up with that force, the machine, the team behind you. And this thing is going to become important here a little later. I'm going to tie all this together at the end. But going rogue is another one. And this happens all the time down at fires. You go out on a fire, some individual just goes off over here, not because they're trying to get out from underneath the umbrella and just disappear and go off and do whatever. They're doing the best they can. They're doing what they think is right, what they think is the most essential thing, but as it turns out, they're putting themselves at risk. They're potentially risking the people that have overwatch over them, and potentially risking the entire organization, because now all these people have to go and find them. So, you know, rogue actors, we don't want to do that. You know, don't wander off by yourself. Always work in twos. And let this person above you know. It's just, hey, here's where I'm going and here's why. I'm going to go down this hill and check for spot fires. I'm going to go up this hill and see if there was another lightning strike. Whatever it was, doesn't matter. Anything operating outside the chain of command makes these people nervous. Okay? Whoever the IC is, when he can't account for his people, all of a sudden his day went to crap. You know, you've got to be able to maintain accountability of where everybody is to make sure that they stay safe. I'm going to use another example here. Leonard, on the call looking for the car. Tell us what your actions were and your mindset behind it. Why were you doing what you're doing and what you did?
Well, we were reacting to the scene where it was first reported.
Okay.
So that's where we're told to go. Then there was reported that there's nothing in that area.
Okay. Where were you at that point?
Dispatcher called and said it's by another gravel pit. There's 3 gravel pits out here. So we called and asked permission to check out the second gravel pit. which we got. And then we drove by, did our thing, and there was nothing there. And then something, we didn't catch all of it on the radio, something was said, next thing I know, we're standing down.
Okay, okay. At that point, okay, just when you heard the stand down, what went through your head? What were you thinking about? I mean, what
was I thinking about? If the car was rolled over someplace, is there a person involved? Are they injured? Is there
Yes.
fuel leaking? If there's fuel leaking, potential fire. If there's a fire, who knows how fast it could grow because of the location where it could be.
Right.
So-
You immediately are in first responder mode. You gotta, there could be somebody at risk. There could be somebody who genuinely needs some help. What'd you do?
We went and checked it out.
Okay, where'd you go?
To the accident.
To the accident scene. Where was the accident scene? For those folks who didn't respond here.
It was on Salem Road, about a half mile off the blacktop coming down from 78.
Right, right.
There where the curbs are at, there's a big ditch right there on the right-hand side coming in.
I guess known as Dead Man's Curve or whatever.
I don't know what it's called.
The what's that?
Clay mine.
Yeah, it's a little up from there. But yeah, that same
It
area.
was on the gravel road, so I don't know what it's called.
Now, my reaction to that call was a little different. We had gotten the stand down because dispatch had called me and said, hey, this call was reported last night. We gave you bad information when we toned you out. Okay, no problem. So stand down, we're all heading home. When I heard Deb get back on the radio saying that she was on scene of the accident and was giving a basic size up of what she saw, my umbrella was shot. You know, I was actually standing in the driveway of Terry. We were having a conversation about how the response went, you know, how far off it was. And all of a sudden, we've got a potential incident, or at least that's what I'm hearing. So I am no longer able to account for the people underneath me because they are no longer inside of our coverage area or going back to the station, which is what else was doing. It's in the best of intentions, because the motivations for doing that are absolutely right. I mean, you wonder, hey, is there somebody underneath this vehicle, or, you know, who knows what? So with the best of intentions, and that's what scope of duty, what screws it up every time, is good intentions. This is what makes it difficult to operate as this team. Because whenever somebody says, hey, my good intentions are going to make me go and do X, Y, and Z, what they do is they pull themselves outside of the team that we're operating in, and they become something else. They become a rogue resource or whatever. I have made all of these mistakes myself. I'm not standing up here preaching to you guys about stuff that I have not personally done and learned from. So that's what I'm trying to express, is how to make our response better every time. The actions that you and Deb took, I have no problem with. The procedure and how they went about could be improved. It makes it so the accountability is better for everybody on scene, the safety level for everybody who's on scene is better if we come up with better ways to respond. So, with that in mind, Leonard, just back to you. Give me another way to respond and do exactly what you did, but to still operate as a team instead of as an individual.
Well, there's two different options.
Okay?
One, the IC in charge could go ahead and check it out since you're close by. The second thing is, since that wasn't said, we should have radioed back to the IC and said, we're gonna go check it out.
Okay, either one of those would have been fine. Fine.
So,
Yeah.
our concern was there somebody injured?
I know, but having the concern for the injured party cannot supersede your own safety. I know, I mean, we all say, hey, I mean, we want to be there, we want to help. I mean, that's why we're here, but you can't allow a scene to jeopardize your own safety in order to be involved with it. Mostly because our skill levels are so low, and we don't have a lot of broad areas of expertise. We have a few narrow ones, and we have to play those. But out here, we have to respond to everything. So, you know, there is kind of a difficult way to to try and rationalize how we can respond and do it in the best way. And some of our SOPs will help us with that. As a little odd note, the very first class of leadership in wildland firefighting is actually called fellowship to leadership. You go, wait a minute, it's a class on leadership and they're teaching me how to be a follower? Well, what is that all about? The bottom line to that is you can't be an effective leader unless you know how to follow. And following the chain of command is what makes what we do safe for all of us. Because I don't care who this is and I don't care who these guys are, as long as they're watching out for them. And these folks down here have to make it easy on these guys, because it's hard to keep track of multiple resources going in directions all over the place. That's really hard to manage. Let alone you start throwing in fire, screaming civilians, livestock on the road, and everything else that's going to happen. So, okay. With that, any questions about how our department here are going to proceed in scope of duty? There should be questions on this. Please.
So I'm gathering from all that, then my take on all of that, the ultimate goal of all this is much better communication. In other words, had she communicated with you about that, for example, and then you make the determination on where to go from there, and then that way you also know where she is, what's going on, and all the rest.
Sure.
Maybe it's because of my recent past here of what I've been doing, but that's one thing we have severely lacked, is we've had really piss poor communications in the past. We've either had people who had no clues what they were asking or what they were doing, or people that didn't ask or communicate. That's what I got out of that. I don't know that that's so much a question, but...
Well, no. That's a good summation of a way to deal with it. And it's, communication is such a broad stroke. I mean, I hate to...
In other words, it's better, in my view, it's better to ask a question and find out beforehand with whoever's in charge and let them make that decision.
Oh, yes. And part of that is, don't sit here and make the assumption that, Joe's just trying to make it easy on himself because, he's always going to be in charge. I'm not. I am looking forward to turning over these scenes to you guys. Everybody's going to get their shot to be IC. I'll go pull hose. Actually, one of the things that my fire crews always knew about me at the beginning of the season, if they see me fighting fire, if you see a hand tool in my hand or a hose, over my shoulder, one of two things has happened. Either all hell's breaking loose and we need every man we've got on the line, or I'm having fun and leave me alone. I'm just not playing, because I rarely get to actually fight fire anymore, so when I do get that chance, I will take it. And that means, hey, here you go, Bill, here's the fire. It's all yours, I'm gonna go here and play. So I'm asking you to not only be easier on me, but be easier on yourselves, because this will get flipped around, and you guys will get to do this job. And a lot of it's scene specific. Leonard, I guarantee you're going to get the medical scenes. They're yours. It's not even a discussion. The moment you arrive on scene, you're the IC.
There again, on the communication side, to caveat what Chris is saying, okay, we were headed that direction anyway, so, communication is a two-way street.
Sure.
We went ahead and did it without your permission, but yet, there are times too that maybe the IC should have said, well, just go check it out because you're close by. So we could have gone either direction. Yeah, were we at fault for not asking? Sure. But the IC didn't say go check it out and we're right there too, so.
Well, and that's a difficult assumption. The last location that I had for you was Siloam Stone, which is not really close to the other end. You went around the other way.
We came down past the firehouse, was on Red Creek Springs Road, sitting at Siloam Road, when we heard a call that there's nothing out on 96. And when they said another mine or another gravel pit where they were by, that automatically says we have to go back south because there's the other two. One on Siloam Road and one out further out on Siloam Road. That's why we said, is it all right to go the other direction? You said, yeah, go south. So we're headed that way anyway.
Yeah, I mean, to you, it's crystal clear where you are at the time. For me, being several miles away, I know the general area of where you are. And everyone did an awesome job of the stand down. You know, I got it from dispatch. Stand down to all Red Creek Fire. Every unit called me back and acknowledged the stand down. This is where the confusion really starts, because when I hear that, my natural assumption is all of the forces underneath here, all of these guys are heading back to the station or to their residence, depending on the circumstance. So my immediate thought is, okay, I have accounted for all of my resources. They did an awesome job without me having to ask, of calling me on the radio and saying, yep, got it, Joe, we're standing down. You know, I got a unit identifier and that they had acknowledged the message. So that's what threw me for the loop, Leonard, is when I hear that, I make that assumption that everyone is returning to either quarters or their home. And then when I hear that they're not doing that, that's when I worry. Because if I had not heard your traffic, if that was the last I had heard from you, I wouldn't even know where to start looking except Siloam Stone, somewhere around there. You know, that was the last location I had for you. So from my point of view, I had a resource out there that I couldn't account for until I heard you, and then I was like, whoa, they're way down there. And, you know, okay, now that I know where you were, I'm like, okay, I'll pay attention to them and listen to what they have. But for a while there, it was confusing for me because I made the assumption that everyone was heading back to the station. Don't try to anticipate what an IC is going to do. Be proactive and call them. Ask the question. I mean, I will never get mad at anybody for asking a question. That's always an easy one. And, you know, generally stand down just means return to quarters or station. But, you know, these things will kind of work out as time goes by. Any other questions on how we operate that way? And scope of duty as to what that means? No other questions on that, really? Okay. All right. I'm going to do a quick